Okay. Hello, good morning, depending on who you are, when you're watching this, where you're at. Welcome. The mini masterclass series. What did we on session or semester 5 already? In the new year, this is the first one of the new year, so this will be fun. We've got a lot more classes up on the schedule. So if you haven't checked out the calendar yet, be sure to, because we've got some really good classes coming up. So, okay. Today's topic is going to be the speaker processing inside of the AHM, so internal dedicated processing. In this masterclass, we'll go over the location, where it's sitting at inside the AHM, its uses, when we might implement it, how we start programming it, and the actual deployment of the speaker processing. So let's hop in here. Okay, so the location of the system processor, or the speaker processor rather, is inside of the AHM64, of course, which we've talked about many times in these mini master classes. And if you are unfamiliar, that's our 64 by 64 matrix processor or system processor. And essentially, it's got 64 inputs and 64 like output buses, which we call zones. So the speaker processing can live on every and any zone or output bus available on the AHM. And it's actually, you can find it by programming it. If you go to System Manager, Channels, and then you go to Zones, and then you go to Speaker Processing. And I'll actually hop in there here in just a second, and we'll walk through everything together. As far as the uses of the speaker processing inside the AHM, it's really for smaller array deployments. And the reason I have quotations around array is because there is some argument to be had on what makes an array. Typically, around 6 boxes in a single speaker array system is kind of considered the minimum amount to actually be able to create an array. But this is all kind of theoretical. So, smaller array deployments, probably I would recommend probably 6 boxes or so, maybe 8 boxes. You start getting much larger than 8 boxes per hang, you may want to start thinking about using a slightly different system. This is also really good for large deployments of small speakers. So think about you may have the same kind of speaker or similar speakers that are going to many places, like maybe like a corporate room, or perhaps like a ballroom inside of a convention center or a hotel, those kinds of places, or even like like in really large sanctuaries, that's also a places they may have a normal hang for the PA, but then they'll also have an entire like ceiling set for either more of a passive sort of ambiance feeding audio system, or in combination with their normal PA hang. So those, or if you're just trying to create a crossover, crossover is really the big idea here. Or if you kind of want to make a makeshift bandpass filter. So let's kind of walk through this now. So I'll bring this up and let's get System Manager going. And you all should hopefully be able to see that pretty well. Okay, so right now I'm in System Manager, of course, which is how we program and access the AHM64. It is actually plugged into my unit. I've got it pretty much blank. I only have 1 or 2 things labeled right now just for clarity's sake. So just walking through this, if I go into configure, I can see I've got input stereos and zones configuration. That's where our speaker processing lives, is inside of the zones configuration. So here's one of the ways that we can access it. So I can go in here and I can choose the number of zones I would like. I went with the minimum number, which is 12, just to make it really easy to see on a single window. So, but I can have, of course, up to 64. And you'll see the less zones I'm using, the more processing outputs I've got available, which is really what the speaker processing is. And you can see I can even click over here, and I can, from this window, if I would like, choose how many bands or how many ways per zone I would like to have. So if I wanted to have a 0, of course, which would be I'm not using the speaker processing, I could have 2 ways, 3 ways, or 4 ways. If you've done or worked with like speakers of any kind, you've probably heard of a two-way speaker or a three-way speaker, or maybe even a four-way speaker. I personally haven't run into a four-way speaker in quite a long time, maybe never, but they are out there. So it is an option for us. So really I can set these up in my configuration. I've just made one of my zones a stereo pair, and you will see why in just a moment. So I can click out of there. Also for fun, I have a signal generator going. So we have 8 signal generators, separate signal generators inside of the AHM64. So I just have number 1 running as pink noise, and I will feed that into our channel to act as if maybe we were doing some kind of system check or system tuning, something like that. And pink noise is always just a really great default, since it really mimics how humans hear very well. So we'll go with that. So we know we have that set up. So now I can go to channels, and I can go to zones to see everything I've got set up thus far. And you'll see right now I only have one. I've named it console, and I've got that being fed through. So we're pretending that this is just a front of house feed. And this is my input side. I'm just feeding just the main left right off of my console from front of house, and I'm feeding it into this basically output bus. The reason I'm doing that is so that I can feed this bus to other buses. So I've labeled this console, so I know what's going on, and it's being fed by front of house. Now I'm going to name these output buses something else so I know what they are. So let's do PA left, and we will do PA right. There. Okay, so now I have PA left, PA right, and I have my little console hanging out down here. So again, the reason I'm doing it this way is so that I can now feed. I have a completely independent console feed. So maybe I want to send that to go record someplace else, or I'm going to feed it into a cry room someplace, or let somebody in a classroom access it, let it broadcast anything. There's so many different things I could do with it, but I want to have it separate than my PA feed. So now what I can do is take this entire bus and feed it into these other 2 buses. And I can do that by going to my cross-point routing, and I'm going to click on zones. So I want this to be fed with my console feed. So I'll hit OK, hit that at Unity. You can see instantly I've got signal. That's that pink noise I've set up. And I will go to PA right and do the exact same thing. There we go. Perfect. Oh, forgot to put that at Unity. There we go. All right, so I've got my console feed, which of course I could, send someplace else if I wanted to. I could adjust it before sending it to the PA. But the real main point of this being, now I have 2 separate PA feeds that I can treat entirely separately. So now my left side and my right side both have their own total processing. If I wanted to and have each of these feed their own subs and kind of have like a stereo sub configuration, why you might want to do that is totally, it's a different conversation. But the point being, I have 2 feeds and I may want to split this up. Maybe I've got I can even do a sub right here as well. Oh, and I see I've got a question. Would that console feed typically be a matrix mix? You mean coming straight off the console? No, this would be in between the sound console and the amplifiers or the PA. So this would be acting both as a matrix processor and as a system processor. So I'm having it feed me just the main output, the left-right coming out of the console. And now I'm adjusting where I'd like to send it. So instead of having like subs on aux maybe at the console, I'm doing it in the system processing right here. So, okay, so we've got all this, and maybe I want to use some speaker processing now. So let's say I can, and again, we're here on channel zones, so I'm looking at my output bus configurations here. I can go all the way over here and see speaker processing. I can click on that. And I don't have anything selected right now. That's okay. I can go in here and select 2-way. It's a very popular configuration. And it immediately splits my entire frequency band in 2. You can see I can move these around and do stuff. I can even type in here. 125 is a pretty popular standard answer here for this kind of split. So now I've got one band going to my highs, my high band, getting set over there. And then I've got one for low, That's right here, being sent to likely a sub of some kind. And you can see I've got processing on each of these bands. And I can change the slope, which is perhaps the best part about this. So LR stands for Linkwitz-Riley. 24 is the slope. And we default to that because it is the least interfering filter and slope that we can kind of use. In a nutshell, without going super far into it, essentially when these two bands come together in sum, they equal out flat. So our frequency response of this entire filter would be a flat magnitude response. We have other filters, of course. We have Butt is always funny, but we have Buttersworth in different slopes, as well as a different Linkwitz-Riley slope and a first order filter. Typically, and it depends on which slope, when you're using Buttersworth, when the two bands are summed together, you actually get a little bit of a bump. And so defaulting to a Linkwitz-Riley is just a nice, clean, as affecting the band as little as possible sort of solution. So got Linkwitz-Riley 24, and you can see I've even got little information here. So I can click on my EQ here, and I can swap it between a graphic and a parametric if I would like. I can copy and reset easily. So if I do this, I'm nailing it. Oops, I messed up. Let's reset that. Or particularly with kind of these sort of systems, you may be doing either a notch filter and changing the width, or the other extreme, which is a very, very gentle bell. So that is the typical, you're either doing very, very tiny cuts or very gradual nudges in a certain direction. So I can do that. I can swap back to the graphic, and I can go here, and I've got my delay. So I could delay my subs to my tops or vice versa, depending on the situation. If I wanted to take one of these and feed it to my delay towers, perhaps I'm doing it that way, and I can change the metric which I'm changing, or viewing the change rather. Then I've got my level, of course, and I have my limiter with its own 10-second histogram. I can, if I turn this on, drop this down, I can actually see what's happening, and I get a little gain reduction meter as well, just from a bird's eye view here. So that's always really handy. I love that all of our dynamics processing has this, so I can always keep track of it and see what's been happening over the last few seconds. So I've got that, and it's on each band. Well, now I've made this crossover. I've made these filters of speaker processing, and they need to go someplace. So I either have, go to my assign page, and it will be IO patch bay. This is going to be zones. And you can see here, I've got kind of three options now. So I have PA left crossover 1, and PA left crossover 2, which are my two bands. So I have the option of sending a full band signal someplace, or I can send it per band to someplace else. These are just my local outputs on the back of my AHM, but I can send them over Dante, which is what the card I have currently plugged in here is, or over my S-Link output. So maybe to another console, or to, you know, some DX 168s that I've got near the amp rack, something like that. So we'll go to look outputs. So again, I can do a full range, my full frequency spectrum on this one, or I can do each of the bands and send them out someplace. Also of note, so because we've now kind of added extra zones, that takes away some of our zone processing. So it takes away some of our outputs because we're dedicating them to the speaker processing, which is why if I head back over to my configure tab and I do my zones config, is why these are complementary to one another. So if I have more zones, I have 20 now, I have less processing outputs available. If I have 50 zones that I'm using, I have, again, I only have 12 then. If I go back over here, you can see I've got a lot. And remember, there are 64 output buses or zones that we've got available for us. And so, yes, on certain occasions, you may be burning a zone or burning an output. And that's a conversation we've had before in new iterations of firmware. Yes, you may be currently burning an extra bus when you're trying to do this configuration, but you have so many output zones that it hasn't yet been a limitation. So if in theory, let's do, just to show you, let's do this, the 4. So now I've got 4 ways, and I can create several band pass filters. I had mentioned that. Let me go to 3 really quickly. So I mentioned that I could make a little band pass filter if I wanted to, which is something that sometimes system engineers want to do. So maybe I want to set this at 30 or 50 hertz. Just type that in, and we're only going to do 18 because nobody's going to hear about that. I could do something like that and pretty much just ignore these other 2 bands, and then I may patch that speaker processing to just say, yeah, let me send the full unspeaker process, unsplit, full range signal out someplace, but then I'm just going to take the second one, and that's what I'm going to send out to the amp rack and things of that sort. Or if I wanted to go over here, so let's say loving that, nailing it, I can go over to my sub and do something similar and just say, yeah, I specifically only want this, or I want an entire strip assigned to specifically just my sub. Let me make sure I'm feeding my console here. There we go. With that, there we go. There are a few different ways to do it. So I could basically just use this and send my lowest band on my speaker processing to a sub. That would make sense, right? On occasion, people or system engineers or front of house engineers want a full strip assigned to their sub so they can do its own complete processing, including more parametric, even more EQ, more compression, delay, or if they wanted to use ambient noise compensation for some reason on the PA, we've got that option. So you're not limited to say, well, I can only feed a sub this way, or I'm locked into doing it this certain way. We have a few different ways that we can do it. So it really all depends on how you prefer to work, how your system engineer or how you, the system engineer, prefers to set your system up. But knowing that we have speaker processing available here and we can affect each of the bands independently is great. Something I also wanted to show you that I think is cool is the ability to, let me do this, my Mac will like this while I'm screen sharing here. I will put this over here. I opened up a new window. It's this little button that hangs out here, and it lets us have 2 windows of the same machine up. So I will hide this over here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Boop. And I'm going to put this up in this corner right here. I'm going to exit out of that and move my image over here. Okay. Now I'm going to click on Assign Monitoring. So if I go there, you can actually see the monitor bus. This is the monitor bus. Like if I had, if this was a regular console setup, this would be like the headphone output. It's my monitor bus. And you'll see at the bottom here, it tells me what my monitor point is. So if I go back over here to my speaker processing, let's go to my zones. Let's go over here. Let's make this kind of weird, shall we? So while I'm moving my mouse around, it's letting me know, hey, I'm listening to zone 1, which I've labeled PA left, and I'm listening to a post fader, and that's what it's showing me on this little 31 band RTA. But if I go and pick each of one of these, like I hover my mouse over one of these bands, it actually goes and picks that. And so now not only, and I actually have it routed right now to go through Dante into Dante V on this computer so I can hear my monitor bus out of my computer speakers, because technology is fun and that's kind of the kind of thing that I like to do. But being able to visually see exactly what's happening, and of course I'm sending pink noise, so this is giving me pretty clear boundaries of what's happening here. If I wanted to change this, I can. If I wanted to say, well, instead of doing, let's move this up You can see now I'm seeing more. If I did a first order filter, which is a very low slope, you can see I'm getting a lot more sort of bleed into the higher frequencies. Go back to Linkwitz Riley. And being able to not only hear each of these bands post filter, but also hearing them or seeing them visually can sometimes be extremely helpful. And then as soon as I go off of those bands, you'll see at the bottom it says, I'm just listening to a post fader at this point. Well, what if I wanted to hear or see any of the things I'm processing inside of each band? Well, good news, we can do that. So if I go, let me make this a little bit wider so we can see this middle band here. So here's what it looks like, just the band as it stands. And now if I go to my graphic, and you can see it's a little grayed out because it's sitting behind this window, but you can see it in this other window over here, that it has locked in my monitor point to my zone 1, which I've labeled PA left, and I'm listening to it to my cross point 2, my second band, post graphic or parametric EQ. So now if I start getting weird, I start doing this, and you can see it directly reflected not only in the RTA itself on my graphic, but now I'm also seeing it on my monitor bus RTA. If I switch over to parametric, I can have that same thing happen. I can make this really sharp and look at that, or maybe I want to do nice wide. And that's such a notch filter, so sharp, it may be hard to show up on a 31 band. But let's go back to Bell and let's just make it. As I'm moving it around, of course, it's instantly updating. And so having this, again, I can be listening to it on my computer speakers, even though I may not have it actually plugged in my monitor bus from my AHM 64, but having audible feedback as well as several feedback visual cues, being able to process my speakers like this is incredibly helpful and incredibly handy. Again, for those times when we want to do smaller arrays or medium-sized speaker deployments, or doing like massive amounts of speakers of the same kind of size, trying to cover a large area, but not going the gigantic PA hang route. So doing this allows us to process them, see things, and have the kind of processing we would hope to have on our PA outputs without putting the strain or work on a console where somebody can easily mess with something, and having this someplace where it's like, the HM64's job is helping with the system processing. So offloading that from the console and having it on here so it's safe, people can't touch it or mess it up. It's not hiding in a rack with knobs where people can touch things. It's nice and safe inside of here. And again, the goal being it's easy for me to hop in here when I am working on it or setting it up, that I can see things and make adjustments as necessary. So I love doing that. And then I can just, when I'm done, just close this window out. This will remain my main window, and I can go about my business. And the monitor bus still works even when it's not separate. It'll just note down here, monitor point, where what I'm listening to. I just sometimes like having a little visual feedback. I do have a couple notes, though, in regards to this. So remember, when you're utilizing speaker processing, each band is taking over one of the 64 output buses. So we're splitting the frequency range and it needs to be routed someplace. So it does take an output bus, or what we're calling zones, and dedicates it to it. Even though we may not actually route it outside of the box, it's going to take some of that processing power because it is quite a bit of processing. So in effect, this takes away from our total zone count. And speaker processing outputs assignment can be found in multiple places. Oh yeah, let me even go back one here. Oh, there we go. There is another place where this is hiding. Let's see here. When you're in here, and I think that maybe I did point this out, I can go in and quickly make all of these several, like, oh, let's make this 2, or let's make this 3 band or 4 band quickly and easily. I can assign it from the patch bay of where the cross points are going. And I can see where they are limited or my limiters as well here. So, and I've even got a nice little polarity switch on my midband. So very helpful, especially in system engineering. Sometimes you just really need to swap the polarity on one of the bands. So it's nice having that middle band one. So we can access it from different points, that being the case. So processing output assignment can be found in multiple places. Use the monitor bus RTA to your advantage. And I will also say that this is not a replacement for a dual channel transfer function, which for things like, smart, if this is not that, it can be used in conjunction with smart, but this is not taking a reference signal and comparing it to an output to try to figure out and tell us what's happening in the middle. That's not what this is doing. This is letting us know this is what's happening to your signal at this point in time. And here is the RTA representation of that. And so when I'm using this out in the field, I'll be on this page. Plus, I may have my smart rig up on a different computer and making adjustments for my system on that. So just to put that out there, this is not a replacement for a dual channel transfer function. They're not the same thing. This is just another one of the tools in our toolbox to help us deploy audio deploy it efficiently, and again, have it be a part of your entire tool set. So with that being said, are there any questions? Anything that's not clear? Anything you want a little bit more information on? This says, is there an automatic feedback suppression option? No, there's not currently. We've been asked before, but we're not sure. In what cases would you like to use an automatic feedback suppressor? Sometimes it comes up on.
I'm envisioning like at a convention center where you have multiple rooms where there's presentations going on, and there may be a speaker, someone giving a presentation in every room. And I've been in a situation where I would be in the audience and the guy is speaking and there's feedback occurring. And so they would call the engineer in charge to come into the room and do some tweaking, and then feedback goes away. But if he's in that room dealing with that, in another room, feedback may be happening with another person speaking, so I wonder, in cases like that, would feedback suppression be an option? Or
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's definitely been a part of the conversation on if we should add this. It's definitely a different kind of, to me, at least in theory, it's closer to like acoustic echo cancellation, where it's trying to listen to itself, which would be very intelligent and be very handy, but to what extent? I'm thinking about other feedback suppressors that I've used before in some systems, and they may just be, maybe they just function on trying to listen for like one frequency that's like sticking out too much. And anyways, we don't need to get into it. But so we don't have that right now, but that's definitely been part of the conversation. It is on my list of things to discuss with the development team. So, all right, any other questions? Anything that wasn't clear? We got done a couple minutes early today, which is fine. This is definitely gotta get out in the field and start using this kind of stuff. So yes, it's very cool. I'm biased, but I enjoy this. Okay, alrighty. Well, I will hang out here for a couple more minutes in case any other questions pop up, AHM speaker processing related or otherwise. But thank you all for joining me. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great beginning of 2022.